The streets of New Orleans is a dirty world, but it still spins. You can't do nothing about it but live in it. In the words of Cash Money Records, the Hot Boys. As what would be the case with Chris Boogie Mccann, one of the older dudes from the notorious neighborhood of 3G, located in Central City, New Orleans. Boogie, the brother of Harry, aka Hoover, was what one would consider as an OG in the hood. No stranger to the grimy streets of the NO, Boogie had been stomping his feet through Uptown ever since Kendrick Rodney, aka Lil, was doing his thing, being a well-known gangster in the streets of New Orleans. Injecting the impressionable minds of the youth of New Orleans with constructive positive thinking is no easy task, as their wayward mindset has been passed on from generation to generation. Guns, violence, and murder almost seem to be a tradition, as inherited street beefs have been passed down for years. None more infamous than the Calio 3G War, which has flooded the streets of New Orleans with bloodshed for a long time. This would give credence to the saying, the apple doesn't fall too far from the tree, which in some cases, not all, would seemingly be a true statement. To keep it all the way 100, the real OGs out the yo who are still around from the late 80s and 90s to the very early 2000s have paid their debts to society and have moved on to be stand-up men, living a life free of any activities from the past. As what would be the case with a laundry list of retired gangsters from other projects and mean grimy streets of New Orleans. This story, however, revolves around the mid to late 2000s. The impact of Hurricane Katrina will play a huge role in the events that would take place.
Tonight, News Channel 6 breaks news. The WDSU I-Team has learned 2 cameras designed to catch criminals in the act were not rolling during a shooting last night, and that could be the last straw for one New Orleans City Council member. Good evening, I'm Chris Fairbairn. Norman is off tonight. WDSU News Channel 6 investigative reporter Travers Mackle joins us now to explain who could soon be calling for the entire crime program to be scrapped.
Well, Chris, the person calling for change is a City Council member who has been critical of how the cameras are paid for and monitored, and tonight it looks like neighbors agree with her.
In the midst of the 3G RICO trial, when asked how was he able to run with the dudes off Galvez, Washington McCaskill, aka Big Wash, will bring up the name Chris Mccann, aka Boogie, as one of the men who had given him a G-Pass after Wash was released from prison. The NOPD would tag 3G with being tied to some of the most horrific crimes in past years, multiple murders, drug activity, and weapons charges. In 2013, Boogie was one of the defendants indicted on state gang racketeering charges. In 2014, Boogie pleaded guilty to 5 felony counts under the state racketeering indictment and received a 20-year sentence. According to the Department of Public Safety and Corrections, Boogie was released in July of 2019 after he received more than 3 years of credit for time served, as well as additional credit for treatment and rehab programs while being incarcerated. Before this would all unfold, Chris Mccann, aka Boogie, was serving a 6.5-year federal sentence on a gun charge. The NOPD would say that they found Boogie in possession of the burner that was used to delete Elvin Wilson. Boogie was charged in connection with that homicide, but prosecutors would drop the murder and criminal street gang charges against him. In an unfortunate turn of events, at the age of 45, Boogie will be fatally shot shortly after 5:30 p.m. January the 1st on Claiborne Avenue, near Louisiana Avenue, right round the Jazz Daiquiri Shop.
Just a few hours later in Central City here around 5:30, NOPD got a call about a traffic crash on the intersection of Toledano and Louisiana Ave. And officers saw this pickup truck crash into a utility pole and a man inside suffering from multiple gunshot wounds. You can see several poles were taken out of the ground on this corner prior to the crash and caused a big power outage. The man was later pronounced dead at the hospital. Police also reported that a woman was struck by a vehicle, but we're still working to get some details on that incident. I spoke to the owner of the gas station where the crash happened. He said he He and his employees are inside tonight, scared about what's taking place, and he's worried about the violence in this area.
Boogie had been in jail or prison since 2009, up until his release from prison less than 6 months prior to his murder. Released July the 21st of 2019 on good time, parole from the David Wade Correctional Center located about 70 miles northeast of Freeport, Boogie would still be on parole at the time of his death and would have remained under court order supervision until 2033. The last time Boogie was free was October of 2009, although the convictions that led to his prison sentence did not come until January of 2013 and December of 2014. In September of 2023, the Orleans Parish District Attorney's Office would secure the conviction of 27-year-old Jamal Williams, who was convicted of manslaughter from the slaying of Chris Boogie Mccann on New Year's Day of 2020. Video surveillance and ballistic testing led to the arrest of Jamal Williams for the slaying of a convicted member of the notorious Central City gang known as 3NG. A grand jury indicted the 27-year-old Jamal on a charge of second-degree murder in Boogie's killing. Jamal would also be charged with obstructing justice in a murder investigation and with being a felon in possession of a firearm. The murder count carried a mandatory life prison sentence upon conviction. At the time of the shooting, the NOPD were called to the scene to investigate a car crash. Upon arriving to the scene, they would find utility poles down and Boogie shot up inside of his wrecked pickup truck. More than 23 evidence markers would be draped down South Claiborne Avenue. Boogie had been the first to plead guilty in the racketeering indictment that named 20 suspected 3NG members.
We will use every weapon in our arsenal to bring them to justice.
Orleans Parish District Attorney Leon Canizero was firm as he described a 30-count racketeering indictment against 20 men in the 3NG gang. He says the group conspired to distribute illegal drugs and used violence to gain and maintain control over the area where it operated near 3rd Street in South Galvez.
They don't show any breaks to the people of this community. We're going to give them no breaks either.
Authorities say the 3NG gang is responsible for at least 10 murders in the last 5 years.
The people of New Orleans has said enough is enough.
This indictment is the 4th indictment stemming from the multi-agency gang unit.
While these cases are more difficult to investigate and prosecute, it allows us to present the whole story to the jury so that they can see the consequences of a pattern of activity rather than looking at a single crime.
Getting these cases to court could prove complex, though, because defendants in each case will be tried together, and every defendant needs their own attorney.
And our office actually is conflicted from representing any of those 15 individuals because we either previously represented some of them, or currently represent some of them, or represent some of the witnesses who have to be testifying in those cases.
Another possible problem after budget cuts and attrition, there are only 41 public defenders for criminal district court, and that's about a dozen less than last year.
Get ready, because this is what we see to be a very successful sort of prosecution.
On your side in Orleans Parish, Rachel Wolf, WDSU News.